Welcome to the Daily Signals Issue in Brief. Hi everyone, I am Genevieve Wood, senior contributor at the Daily Signal. The issue at brief today, the escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas. And here to talk about that with us and get some better perspective on this story is Jim Carafano. Jim is the vice president at the Heritage Foundation's Davis Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy. Jim, thanks for agreeing to chat with us.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
So let's just start out with getting some perspective here. What set off this last military conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Well, it really began when Hamas, which is in Gaza, and Fatah, which is the Palestinian governing entity, which is in the West Bank, agreed to form a coalition government, a unity government. And what that did is it really made Hamas more aggressive, and they began to get more aggressive, and that culminated with the kidnapping and murdering of some Israeli teenagers. And that began this current spiral of violence that then escalated with Hamas firing rockets at Israel and Israel retaliating, and then eventually moving into Gaza to get the tunnels, which are how they move weapons into the country and also where they hide them, and the missile sites, the rocket sites themselves. So that's the current state of play.
Well, you mentioned all the rocket launches. I mean, there have been more than 2,000 rockets, is my understanding, that have come from Gaza into Israel. Yet much of the news, and to be fair, Israel has responded, but much of the news coverage has been about the Palestinian deaths, and there have been larger numbers of Palestinians killed than Israelis. But what do you make of that? Why is that the coverage and the take that you've seen that seems to be the spin?
Well, if it bleeds, it leads. I mean, the reality is the Israelis have a capacity to defend themselves. They have this missile defense system called the Iron Dome, which is capable of intercepting some of the rockets. The rockets are also very, very inaccurate. They're really terror weapons rather than military weapons. So the casualties on the Israeli side have been very light. So as you would expect, all the attention is really gravitated towards the operations in Gaza. You have to remember, Gaza is a very small community. It's very dense, extremely urban. It's incredibly difficult to undertake military operations, particularly when Hamas uses the Gaza people as shields to hide and cover their activities. It's very, very hard to conduct even very precise military operations without having some level of civilian casualty. So naturally, that gets a lot of the attention.
Well, but isn't it true that Israel tries to contact these regions that they're going to be shooting their missiles into or rockets into on the Gaza side to let the people there know? Because as you said, these are citizens that Hamas is oftentimes using as human shields to let them know, hey, we're about to hit this area, you may want to get out.
So Israel's really involved in its third war with Hamas and Hezbollah in recent memory, and in each one of these conflicts, they really do go to school and try to learn both how they can minimize civilian casualties, how they can be more effective militarily, and also how they can get their message out. So, for example, the Israelis are very aggressive on social media and Twitter, explaining their side of the story, explaining what they're doing, such as dropping leaflets, broadcasting, letting people know where they're going to conduct military operations. So the Israelis do an extraordinary amount because they realize, in addition to the humanitarian responsibility, not to necessarily see innocents suffer in war, they also realize that they're in the middle of a war of ideas and a propaganda war, and that Hamas uses everything possible to try to turn public opinion against the Israelis.
Well, and I will say that one of our colleagues, Steve Bucci, wrote a great piece, I think, on this. It appears on the Daily Signal, talking about the difference between the military styles and attack styles, both between Israel and Hamas, that I would encourage folks to check out, which they can do at dailysignal.com. Jim, one of the latest news coming out, of course, was that earlier this week on Monday, the State Department said citizens should not, he warned them, don't travel to the Middle East, or not to the Middle East, but to Israel specifically. And then here on Tuesday, basically they banned any U.S. airlines from going into Israel. The Israeli aviation minister there has said this is a victory for Hamas. What's your take on that?
Well, I think part of the banning of the aviation is certainly a reflection of the recent incident in Ukraine. You know, normally commercial airlines have really been off limits. We have very, very few deliberate attacks against commercial airlines. Most of the ones that we have had are where planes are takeoff and landing. For a plane to be attacked at altitude over 30,000 feet, you can only do that with a very sophisticated air defense weapon. It's very, very unusual, but it's really kind of spooked everybody. So I think in part what you're seeing from the State Department is really an overabundance of caution.
You think the Malaysian airline situation has had influence on this?
I don't see how you could conclude otherwise. I mean, the real question is how much longer does this go on? And I think Hamas is in a very difficult situation. They're running out of money. The ground incursions significantly cripple their military capability. The Arab Street is not rising up in support. The Israelis have not suffered an enormous amount of international pressure to do this, and there have been peace offers on the table, which the Israelis have accepted. So Hamas is in a difficult situation here, and quite honestly, the longer this conflict drags out, the more their capability and the more their hold on Gaza is going to be strained. As a matter of fact, recent polling shows that a majority of Palestinians are not pro-Hamas at all anymore.
Well, you would think not, considering many of them are actually losing their lives in this conflict. Final question for you: What should the U.S. role be here, and what, in your judgment, has Secretary of State John Kerry, President Obama, how have they stepped up or not stepped up in dealing with this?
Well, Hamas and Israel are not morally equivalent here, and the United States, I think, has to be a strong ally of Israel in this situation. As long as the Israelis do what they are doing, which is conducting operations which are in their own self-defense, which are in accordance with the rule of law, I think the United States needs to back its allies, which by and large is generally done. And then, a ceasefire is in everybody's interest. As a matter of fact, the Israelis already agreed to a ceasefire that was proposed by the Egyptians, and the withdrawal of military activity on both sides. And the United States, of course, is supportive of that. So there's a limited role for the United States here. If the United States made a huge mistake here, it really was when the unity government was formed. The United States should have come out squarely against that. We should have cut aid to the Palestinians, because emboldening Hamas is a bad idea. And in a sense, not acting more vigorously against the unity government, that in a way contributed to getting us where we are. That was a big mistake. The way to the way forward is support Israel and continue to press for a legitimate ceasefire.
Jim, thank you very much for helping put this issue in brief. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And hey, everybody, if you want to learn more about this particular topic or a whole host of other issues that affect you policy-wise from a cultural perspective, please stay in touch with us just by visiting thedailysignal.com. And again, you can get more on this story there, dailysignal.com. Thanks.